What's good, everybody? It's your boy Big Nate. Welcome to Big Nate's Book Reviews, some of the best book reviews, and today we are reviewing the Netanyahus, an account of a minor and ultimately even negligible episode in the history of a very famous family by Joshua Cohen. So I got my doobie right here. Is ready to be sparked, and today we smoking this one for Joshua Cohen. So if you got your doobie, needless to say, go ahead and spark that, and then without further ado, we are finna get right into it. So the Netanyahus, this book, not to be confused with the Netanyahus, which I was calling it for an embarrassingly long amount of time. Hold up, bro, hold up. I always get to yapping before the doobie's fully sparked. You just gotta take that time. To the people who have sparked out their doobie, don't know exactly what I'm talking about. Hold up. I'm gonna do this. Alright, the Netanyahus. This book was published in 2021. It was the winner of the National Jewish Book Awards. It was a top 100 notable books in New York Times. All of this stuff right up there. And then along with all that, it, of course, was the winner of the 2022 Pulitzer Prize. So along with all that, Joshua Cohen has written like several other novels, and he basically has writing like in any major publication that you would want to get published in the first place. So he's a prolific writer. But interestingly, he actually is like from what I could tell, I haven't smoked. Dude, I do this every time. I haven't smoked in a minute once again, so we got a log on this one. So he's actively against the idea of an MFA, which is interesting. And then rather than studying literature for like higher education, he studied composition at the Manhattan School of Music. So I find, which is doubly interesting because music is not a part of this book at all. But also just like this it was what we call a fun fact. Like if I'm Joshua Cohen, I'm using this for my 2 truths, 1 lie. And this is the lure, this is the one that throws him off, which is that he helped basically write Edward Snowden's memoir, Permanent Record, and Edward Snowden like attributes the success of that book like entirely to Joshua Cohen. So, and the more you know what I'm saying. So, but okay, without further ado, let's get into the book, the Netanyahus. So, this is a difficult book to explain, honestly, but roughly speaking, I would say that we're following our protagonist, Ruben Blum, who we know from the first line is a Jewish historian. Now that is not to be confused with a historian of the Jews. He is Jewish who just happens to be a historian. His work is actually on some like obscure thing related to taxation. But so that's our protagonist, and this, among other things, this book is very much like a campus novel. Like it takes place at or around what's called Corbin University, which is not a real, it's like a fictional thing that I think is supposed to represent Cornell. And like part of the book too is getting like the family life of the Blums and a whole bunch of other stuff. But like the main premise of the story is that Ruben is asked by the professor, by the head of his department, basically to host this obscure academic for interview weekend, and he's a real Jewish historian, that is to say a Jew who is a historian of the Jews. And the thing is, some of you might recognize that name as him being the father of Benjamin Netanyahu, which more of you might recognize as the Prime Minister of Israel. If you're wondering, I didn't recognize any of the names. But anyway, so like that's basically, so he comes, right? The kicker with Ben Zion is unexpected, unannounced, uninvited. He brings his wife and his 3 children, who are, the children at least, are incredibly rambunctious, and they are a very imposing family. They are a very absurd family, also quite rude. And so, I mean, that's like a huge part of the book. But okay, so like that's basically the premise, right? And there's, as you'll see, there's a lot more that's going on here. So like one of the things is that literally just like one of the themes of the book, one of the big themes of the book is basically the modern Jewish experience, which, if we are taking Joshua Cohen's, Ruben Blum's experience as representative, is just absolutely filled with some like everyday casual racism. You know what I'm saying? Like the very premise of the story is him being asked by the head of the department to host this guy, right? This Jewish historian. But the thing is, it's like Reuben was relatively new, so he didn't like, it wasn't his turn in the cycle, and his work has nothing like to do with Jewish history. It's like literally taxation. And like Reuben himself, he said he did not take any pride in his Jewish heritage, and he ignored it, and that's when he couldn't deny it. So it's like these two are not a good match. But so he's kind of asking the head of the department, like, why? What's the deal? And he's like, well, we feel like you're in a unique position, given that, you know, he's one of your own. And it's like, one of my own. And he's like, yep, glad we understand each other. And so it's like, you know, Reuben knows what's going on here, which is that he's like the university's like pocket Jew. He's the Jew they can trust, being sent out to go invest this other unknown Jew and come back and report back. And that's actually, now that I think about it, kind of a theme that recurs in the story a couple times. But the point is, like, he's literally being like, the whole premise of the story is okay, just let me even just go on, right? So this is one example of like what you might call something like microaggression. And I actually don't think Joshua Cohen would like that term, because this book very much has like an anti-woke undercurrent to it, where it's like he kind of criticizes, like, at the very least, like hyper offensibility, hyper sensitivity, like people just like looking to be offended, and there being a certain like entitlement with that. But I won't even get into all that. But like literally in this same conversation, the head of the department is like, he mentions money, and he's like, you know, I know that's your favorite subject, but it's not mine. And it's like, okay, he might get the pass because Reuben does work with taxation, but it's like that. Like, you can kind of read between the lines, and then that's just what, like, literally in the same conversation. So Reuben's worried about getting cut, like that he's gonna get fired, and head of the department's like, you're good, bro, chill. But he's like, haven't you? I thought you've been cut already. Like, and then Reuben's like, wait, what is going on? What's happening here? He said, chill. I was just trying to make light of the fact. He said, I was trying to make light of the situation by referencing circumcision, and it's like. You know, you don't need to do that. And it's like, that is all throughout the book, like throughout the whole thing. And it's like, this is why I feel like it's a good book to like, that people should read, because, and like I think, again, I keep coming back to it, the powers of literature. But it's like, you as a reader, Jewish or not, it's like, all right, someone says some slick shit, it's like, okay, that's cool, you can like brush it off, whatever. Someone says in a completely different place, some more slick shit, oh, okay, whatever. But by the end of the book, it's, as like I said, as a reader, it's gotten under your skin, and if you're Jewish, then you probably just resonate all the more. But and it's like a tension for him, right, for Reuben, because he's basically like, he feels like to get upset at these so-called microaggressions is literally, he says, it's disrespectful to his ancestors, because, you know, he talks about how like Greek people used to like strangle Jewish newborns with their umbilical cord, straight up, then and there. And they used to flay like different group of people used to flay Jewish people with like hot irons, dude, like a hot iron, bro. That would actually hurt so bad, but for no other reason than they're Jewish. Not to mention, of course, the Holocaust, the one that killed over 6 million Jews, and through gas and fire. So Reuben is basically like, you know, in light of all of that, how am I gonna get mad when someone says, like, tells like a Jewish joke? The example he says is how many Jews can fit in a car, and I had to look it up because it didn't give the answers, but it's 2 in the front, 2 in the back, 1,000 in the ashtray, which is like kind of, you know, it's kind of fucked up, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, that's one aspect of it, right? The modern Jewish existence. But he also talks about the history of Jewish people. Again, another reason you should read books like this is because it's like, you're just learning. You're not even trying, and you're learning. Like, I can tell you, for instance, that the Jewish history is a history of oppression. And it's like, basically anywhere they have been ever, they are discriminated or marginalized or oppressed in some way, like expelled, dispelled. What is it when you're kicked out of a place? That he talks about how, let's see, what was it? He had 5 different kings in France that expelled Jews. Iberia expelled Jews. Bavaria, Germany, Russia, America, England, Hungary, Austria. Like, literally, like, that's just, you know, off the top of the dome. And he talks about like this unique case, basically this, and I think so. Okay, I'll get to my theory. It's not even a theory. I don't even, why I gotta be saying it's a theory, but the Spanish Inquisition, right? That was like, he talks about this, where it's like the Spanish Inquisition, so much of it was spent like literally ostensibly trying to convert Jewish people to Christianity. It's like, okay, that makes sense. And then this is one of the instances in history where basically like they kind of actually did convert to Christianity more or less of like their own volition. So it's like they more or less got what they wanted, but the Catholics, they needed a people to hate. That's the thing. Civic balance rested on the oppression of Jews. That's fire. So what they did was they said Judaism, he said the genius of the Spanish Inquisition was making Judaism a religion, or a race. It's not a religion, it's a race. It's something inherited in the blood. So, and I always wondered, like, how come Jews are like a religion and a race? Like, I never got that. Like, that's the one. Jewish people are always kind of like an exception, you know? And I think that might be the historical origin. It's because like they literally need, it's like the Jews did what they were allegedly trying to get them to do, and then they did the bait and switch. Yeah, and I mean too, like, just to bring it up, like, one of the big themes of this book is also history, and like just in general, like, who are the authors of history, the cyclical nature of history, like just even like the philosophy of it. But he also talks about Jewish history. Like, he talks about how Jewish people have no history, actually. Jewish people are ahistorical, he says, because he said Jewish people in Christian lands was a Christian history. Jewish people in Muslim lands was a Muslim history. So they don't have a history of their own. They've been so disenfranchised, so perhaps you could say they have not been enfranchised enough to have their own like historical institutions told by them, not by the other, not by the majority who have vested interests and agendas. So anyway, all that just made this book sound very like political and like social and justice. But like the book is, I think this is like the genius of Joshua Cohen here. It's like the book is actually quite funny. I might even argue at times it's hilarious, and it's like the full spectrum, where it's like there's like the witty and like intellectual and the sharp kind of humor, even like satirical at times, but then also you just got like a perfectly timed fart, and that was low-key my favorite of them all. So like, yeah, it's a very interesting book too, on top of that, because it's just, first off, the form is kind of weird. Like, there's a couple chapters written like in like the form of letters of rec, and there's a chapter that's just like a straight speech, and like that, plus this is like actually based off of, very loosely but somewhat based off of like a real event with Harold Bloom, famous literary critic Harold Bloom, who I've mentioned on the channel before. Ruben Blum, Harold Bloom, and Harold Bloom really was asked by his department to host obscure academic named Ben Zion Netanyahus, who for real brought his wife and kids, who really did good. So you know, it's a very I dare say it's like a very original book. It's an interesting book, just in terms of even just form. But okay, I've been talking way too long. Real quick, rating, I'll say B+ to an A-. And honestly, the more, if you like, I lean towards A-. The scales are weighing a little more towards A-. I enjoyed this. The reason it gets docked is because, and I do hate this shit. I mentioned it on my Philip Roth video, and I'm not just saying that because he's Jewish. They have very similar writing styles and things like that. But like, he uses basically a lot of like, it's like long complex sentences with these basically like big GRE words. Like there were, seriously, I would say like several words in this book that I had never seen in my life, and it's like, you don't need to be doing all that. And I know some people like that, and I get it. It is kind of fun. It does kind of have this like almost rhythm to it, but you know, it's not for Big Nate. This is Big Nate's book reviews, some of the best book reviews, so that's how I feel about it. But anyway, wrapping it up, follow me on Instagram. That's critical, actually. It's absolutely mandatory to follow me on Instagram at Big Nate's book reviews. I got a podcast coming soon, for real. Keep your eyes peeled, notification bell. And yeah, without further ado, thank you for watching Big Nate's book reviews, some of the best book reviews.